Hey everybody, it's again time for the DevCentral Security Podcast. As always, I'm Josh Michaels, Security Monkey for DevCentral. With me, I have Matt Duarte, a security curmudgeon and master of all that is security at DevCentral and F5.
How
And
y'all doing today?
howdy, I'm doing good. How you doing?
Tired. Conference season is like upon us and I'm tired.
Oh goodness, I tell you that 11 days in Vegas for Defcon Blackhat.
And training.
And training is just, it's an amazing 11 days filled with awesomeness, but I was ready to be home in my own bed.
Yes, I can understand that feeling. My dog missed me a lot.
So, down at the Black Hat training, what training session did you end up taking?
I took a Offensive Security's Advanced Web Exploitation course. A lot of fun. Matt's is definitely a stern taskmaster for the class, and it's a little different than some of the classes I've taken before in that it had almost no lecture. It was pure labs, pure exploitation, but you can kind of expect that from offensive security and an advanced class. I've taken some other classes where we had a better split of labs to lecture.
Well, I was very pleased. I actually took the pen testing with backtrack course from Offensive Security. The lead instructor was actually Johnny Long this year, who, if you guys don't know, Johnny Long, organizer and master of Hackers for Charity, really good charity organization out there. I was really pleased with the course that it wasn't just go into the class day one and here's backtrack and click this button, click that button, and you're pen testing or you're hacking away. The first few days we didn't actually open backtrack. We started with, okay, here's how it looks in the debugger. Here's how the NOP sled works. Here's how something a piece of malware actually functions, and it really kind of was a great way to lay that foundational knowledge before you actually lay on the tools knowledge. It was kind of difficult even choosing the courses though, because you look at the course catalog and there's some of the ones that seem almost intimidating to look at, and you go, well, I'm not sure if I could hang for 4 days in that class.
Or some of the ones where there's 6 different levels of them and you're not quite sure where you fit in. What I found, though, is if I have any doubts, I just contact the people putting the course on. And several of the courses actually have little quizzes they can send you to go, if you can answer these questions, then this class will probably be too easy for you. Because I had a very different experience in the class I took. We walked in, we fired up a VM. You were told it's a mail server. You can cross-site script it, start fuzzing. And we immediately jumped into exploitation, which, like I said, you expect that from the advanced class. They were very fanatical about warning everybody, this is not a beginner class. And some of the other courses I've taken, such as the advanced malware analysis I took last year, was the same way. You went in and everything was IDA Pro. You were expected to have your own copy of IDA Pro. You were expected to know how to script it because there was no time to teach that. Now, if you want to learn that stuff, Chris Eagle's class is the definitive class on it, and I've taken that one. Terrific, but it's more of an intro course, navigation around something. So the one you took sounded a little more intermediate, because I know they have some courses that are more about using the tools.
Yeah. Well, and I do have to give a props to Black Hat. They're usually fairly good about, if you find yourself in a class where you feel you're drowning, or maybe it wasn't the right class, you can always go and talk with the folks at Black Hat desk and see if there's another class that has an open slot that you can slide into. I know we had that happen with our class. Someone came down from one of the advanced Windows courses back into the backtrack course.
We had the same thing in the advanced malware last year, where we went for our first break, and when I came back, several people had decided to take the lower level course because 4 days of highly obfuscated code was really just a little much for them.
It was a lot of fun. I tell you what, though, I spent more than one night in the hotel room till about 2 in.the.morning writing new exploits, or just working on hacking the server, hacking the VMs that we had.
Yeah, I think we all do that. That's the mindset of the people there. But also, I think that's what makes it accessible, because I know the people in my class, a lot of times, because it was web technologies, we had to work together on our different strengths. My strength was the fact that I'm really good at coding Python, but I'm not as strong on the web side, which is why I actually took the course, because I'm mainly a systems and applications kind of guy. So working together, and I know we spend a lot of time discussing that. And that's really what makes it's not just taking the course and getting the course material, it's that hands-on with the instructors as well as the connections you make. I mean, that's what makes it worthwhile to go there, because the courses can from the outside look fairly expensive, especially when you look at the longer 4-day courses. And, you know, but the Sans courses are also fairly expensive too when you look at it. But you really can't beat the hands-on training, in my opinion.
Yeah,
you can learn a lot from books, but
by far probably the best 4 days of training and learning I've had in the last few years.
I will also, though, put my props out to the OWASP guys, because if you're getting started in web, especially, the OWASP Broken Web Apps VM is very useful. You pair that up with Backtrack as on your offensive side, you get 2 VMs, you've got something to attack with, something that has vulnerabilities, and it has not just the teaching ones that are purposely vulnerable apps, then it just has some ones that are older versions of real apps that happen to have vulnerabilities in them. So you can make the transition from something that's very clearly broken to something that's a little more subtle.
Yeah.
And that's what I also appreciate about the class. We didn't spend a lot of time finding vulnerabilities. They kind of pointed you to where the vulnerabilities would be, and we spent most of the class on exploitation of those vulnerabilities. Because the art of scanning web apps is a completely different thing.
Yeah.
And that's something that, you know, a lot of software has gotten a lot better with. You know, you're seeing more and more of things like the Visual Studios and a lot of the bigger things that are much better at showing you where, you know, problems in coding are. And those tools don't exist in some other systems.
Yeah. So after the trainings, of course, briefings kicked off. Briefings had a couple of really good, you know, keyliners and head notes and discussions. Unfortunately, I was spending most of my time running around taking care of some business. But was there a theme that you kind of found with this year's briefings, or was it just kind of the shotgun approach of different talks? And
well, I think this year was another one of the years in which we saw really evolution over revolution. There was a lot of talks about refining and taking things to the next level. Now that, you know, a lot of the mobile apps have gotten through their initial, we've gotten all the easy bugs out of the way. We've got, you know, Bouncer going. We have all these different scanning things for the mobile apps that are going out there. People have taken a much more sophisticated approach and are looking at kind of the next level, breaking out of the browser sandboxes. Breaking out of or smuggling malware through existing systems. So it's not a lot of, it was, at least in my opinion, it wasn't a lot of new and exciting things, but you looked at the evolution of it. The other one that came up for me a lot this year was with the ubiquity of just embedded tools everywhere, in your car, in your refrigerator, everywhere. What you're looking at is there's some real code quality issues with that. I think the funniest thing I ever heard at both Blackhat and Defcon was a gentleman who was talking about an embedded system, and he laughed and said it was 1990 again, because these embedded systems, the tools aren't there, and to a certain extent, the sophistication of the embedded programmers are not really to the level of, say, somebody who's had to, you know, work on the Microsoft ecosystem for years and really understands that Microsoft spent a lot of tools there to help you get the right stuff out there. Not saying there's not bugs, but to be able to produce much more secure code. And you're really not seeing that in the embedded systems. They're able to find very, very basic things once you figure out how to get into the embedded systems. And that's really what you're beginning to see. The doors are starting to open and the tools are there.
Well, one of the prime examples that came out was the actual hotel door hardware as an embedded system, where he found that once you were able to access the doors, which is usually a small port on the bottom side of the lock, there really wasn't much to it. No security, no, you know, open close. There was, I believe, a 32-bit key that you were able to extract from the actual hardware.
You're looking at that. I mean, that's what it is. A lot of the phone hackers and router hackers over the years have really shown how to, you know, reattach a serial port, how to find the JTAG stuff, and are finding there's very little security there. I think the video that wasn't at Blackhat but has scared me the most was I saw a video of some gentlemen stealing a BMW 1 Series in somewhere in Europe, and they popped it. They popped on just a little programmer to the onboard diagnostics, extracted the wireless key, and presto, just drove off in the car.
I think it speaks volumes to the misconception that security through obscurity is safe when it comes to hardware.
And I think that's what I'm saying is that a lot of times it was, oh, people didn't know how to get at these systems. Oh, it's embedded. They'll never get at it. And now any embedded system, they rip it open. They go, where are the debug ports? And presto, they're there. And once they're in, they're able to look at it and go, wow, this is easy because you guys haven't hardened it up. You guys haven't really had the training and tools that you see in, say, a more advanced programmer on one of the major systems, or, you know, a experienced web developer who just simply knows better and knows how to do authentication and all that.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge of it.
Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, it was interesting hearing some of the side conversations that came out of briefings. One of my favorite parts was actually we hosted a vulnerability disclosures panel in the F5 suite with Marcia Hoffman, attorney from the EFF, Tal Zeltzer is a vulnerability researcher out of Israel, Dan Tentler, another vulnerability researcher out of California, and Jeff Koslow, who's, you know, Jeff, our security PD guy here. And it was literally the five of us sitting up there, acted as a panel mod, having a drink and talking about the vulnerability disclosure process. So we had two researchers, Marcia kind of acting as the intermediary from the EFF, and then Jeff, unfortunately, I apologize to him profusely, acting as a corporate stiff. And really what came out of the conversation mostly was corporations on the whole want to know vulnerabilities are coming out. And I know that's the stance that we take. And the vulnerability researchers, though, on their side, still have some worry about the response that they're going to get from a corporation when they put in or submit a vulnerability.
Well, when you just look at the history of Blackhat, and every couple of years, it's what's the big issue, who's going to get sued so that the class is that the talk doesn't happen,
who's going to have dark suits pick them up before their talk.
Yeah, well, it's not quite that bad, but you understand what I mean. Is that it's gotten to be people are more concerned about the marketing side of it, and can at times ignore the fact that we're trying to move forward the state of the art. I mean, that's what these guys are trying to do. That's why they share this stuff, to move forward the state of the art, to talk about what's out there. Because I can guarantee you the bad guys definitely are ahead of us. I'm firmly convinced that, those of us on the defensive side have to play catch up.
We're always chasing the goal.
Yeah, I've always felt that way. And in a conversation like this, I think that we need to spend more time fostering the researchers who are willing to work with us and do the disclosure. And I think that was really the important point, because I know a lot of researchers who have gotten very gun shy even about approaching a company and going, I have found something, I believe in your software. Do you want to talk about it?
Well, and it was a great opportunity for Marcia from the EFF. She pointed out repeatedly, the EFF is there. If you are a researcher and you found a vulnerability and you're worried about going direct to the company, contact the EFF. They'll work as an intermediary for you. They'll, kind of mask your identity, and you can still take the responsible disclosure path, and everything will get fixed. And at the end, if you want, props can be given, and it'll all work out well. I highly recommend check out the EFF site if you have any questions about that process.
Well, the challenge also is with researchers who are looking to profit greatly off of what they have, because there's a whole marketplace now for vulnerabilities. The rise of all these Flame and Doku and whatever the latest one is, Gauss, all of these things, a lot of, they contain things like 0 days. People want to keep those in their back pockets. There are vulnerability management firms who want to say, we can detect this, but not necessarily work with the people. The bug bounty programs, they are good in some ways, is that they get the bugs out there and they help the researchers to make some money for their hard work. but it also commoditizes the fact that these bugs are out there.
Yeah.
You know, and when you've got something out there and somebody's asking you to pay for a bug in your own product, you know, from a corporate point of view, and this is not the policy of our company, I'm not speaking for our company here, but it is something that from a corporate point of view does make a few of us a little nervous. And I've worked with some great people, I've worked with some difficult people, but I think there's a challenge here between whether or not, you know, between responsible disclosure and these guys making a living.
Yeah. So I think we should take a turn towards the more fun side of our trip here and head over towards the DEF CON side of the house. And I'm going to start with, I had a blast at DEF CON. I work as a security goon, so we work a lot, but this year the people were great, the talks were great, the contests were great. Definitely just had an outstanding time.
I found it ran very well. I mean, my hobby is actually harassing DEF CON goons, especially the red shirt people. Just kind of a hobby. I mean, everybody has to have one. But I found, I thought it ran very smoothly. A lot of contests this year, and everything seemed to go pretty nicely. Lots of contests. I was surprised at the number of them. And I think several of the contests really stepped up this year and became much, much more challenging. I also appreciate the fact that DEF CON Kids was huge this year, and they really spend a lot of time and energy on fostering, you know, the next generation and showing kids that there's right ways to do things and wrong ways to do things, but really showing them that curiosity is okay.
I was jealous, not gonna lie. I know DEF CON Kids, one of the events they had was a forensics. The Rio actually gave a couple of hotel rooms over, and they taught the kids how to do a forensic investigation in the hotel room as one of their contests. I wanted to do that. I did actually, another friend of mine here at F5, and we did capture the packet again this year. Unfortunately, Team Awesome did not win. Major props out to Team Strawberries for their victory, and major props to Riverside and the crew. They did a great job. I know Riverside was really happy. He implemented Morse code over ICMP.
Yep.
And some custom stenography. Really good setup this year. I think there was over 100 teams competing in Capture the Packet.
I also think that it's hilarious. They had 20 teams in Capture the Flag this year. Mm-hmm. I mean, DD Tech must have gone nuts trying to accommodate that many people. Yeah. And props out to the UW guys for being there and giving their all.
That's right. Next year, Huskies. Next year. Yeah. Take it all. Yeah. And there's so many contests. We want to make sure to thank everybody who was running a contest, and to the Ninja Tail folks with the Ninja badges. Wow! For those who didn't see, the Ninja badges this year were actually fully functional GSM cell phones with their own cellular network, thanks to a van parked in the vendor area. Not only those badges, but the actual attendee badges this year were rather far out. I mean, what was it, a 6-core or a 4-core prop?
It was an 8-core parallax propeller.
Oh.
So it's a small embedded 8-core. One of the nice things about it, the badges this year, was the fact that they had everything built in so you could just download them via USB, run straight with it. The software used to program them was free. The Freescale ones from years past were always, you had to have the special programmers to really get the high end. These were very accessible badges, I think. Yeah. And the extra badges at the end, I know I told several people they might want to grab them because it's about as cheap as you're going to find for a fully functional propeller that has all the communication stuff in it.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun, and definitely a lot of fun with people comparing the badges. I think that Lost did a great job last year in getting people to talk to each other. This year it was the same thing. People at DEF CON can be a little antsy about talking to other people, talking to the press, but it really made for a great community. And I think like I said, just ran so smoothly this year. I was suitably impressed.
Well, and I know one of the things that stands out to me the most from this year was just the people. Every year there are little snafus here and there. This year it just seemed to, like you said, run very smoothly. And I know one of my favorite parts that I'm going to remember is I was working track 4, which was the best darn track around, working door and standing there and talking to some of the humans. and talked to the first human. I was like, oh, so what do you do? And he's like, oh, I'm, code, I do code and web coding. I'm like, oh, that's great. And asked the person behind him, oh, well, what do you do? And, oh, I'm a barista. I'm like, oh, okay, so you make coffee. That's cool. What brought you to DEF CON? A friend said I'd love it, and he came and he said he loved it. And then behind them was an older lady, shorter, kind of had one of those more official demeanors about her. After a while, after going to DEF CON and being around certain individuals, you can start to pick up on the authoritative stance. So I asked her, oh, are you enjoying the convention? And she said, yes. And I said, just out of curiosity, you're prior military. And she said, yeah, actually I am. Air Force and did Cyber Command for a while. I was like, oh, well, how many years? I was in for 31 years. And I was like, when you retired, did you happen to have one of those little shiny stars on your shoulder? And she nodded. She's like, yeah. So I stood back and I was like, so here we have a code monkey, a coffee master, and a commanding officer all standing together at this security conference, chatting away, having a good time. Very few other locations in the globe and times and places where you have that same group of people gathered together for a singular purpose. And I think that's one of the best things about DEF CON is that it opens up and makes accessible those type of connections and conversations.
Well, I think the challenge that they've really successfully navigated is having it be of value on multiple levels. That there are good experiences at the beginner level, and for people who are a little farther down the road, there are talks that are aimed at them. There are meetings you can have there. I was also, we can't talk about DEF CON without the parties. As always, I'm surprised that, Int 80 of Dual Core can actually speak after the number of shows he put on, but he is the man. So, Dual Core is definitely always fun to see, and he definitely makes the rounds. And it's interesting is I also took a class with him last year, and this year I saw that he was actually teaching a class. So you can be both artistic and technical
and legit,
and absolutely, and you see that with a lot of the people that are there, the artists and all that. I think that it was fantastic that they really stepped up this year to acknowledge the artists who in their own right are just as technical as the presenters and everything they do. And building a balanced community like that, not only does it help those of us who spend hours head down in code to have sanity, bring perspective to your life, and keep things well-rounded, but I think that's really the key.
So if you had to pick out one thing from either Black Hat or DEF CON that stood out to you as the best part of it, just one thing. I don't know, this is tough.
Best part of it. Probably the fact that there are people that I meet only at DEF CON every year who I would call friends, and I don't ever see them except at DEF CON. And every time I see them, it is always fun because we all bring our toys and our new little tricks to play with. But I think that's really the high point for me, is that I've been going for enough years that I have a lot of friends that we've met there who I have interacted with. Just lounging by the pools, going to the breakouts, talking about the meeting, the meetings and the stuff that we did there. That to me was the top part. The best part, well, they don't always agree with my opinions, but you know what? That's what DEF CON's for, to express your opinions and discuss the reality, right or wrong, of what's going on.
Yeah. Well, Matt, I want to thank you for joining me again today. Everyone out there, hope you enjoyed another DevCentral Security podcast. And